My name is Josh Marshall. I'm the director here at Ingenuity Labs. Welcome to those who are not from Kingston or from Queens. Thanks for making your way here. We have quite a number of industry participants as well this year. At 12:30 after the session today, you'll be able to join everybody downstairs and explore some of the industry partners and the demos that they have here, some of the robots and products, and they're anxiously awaiting your visit. So please make sure you do that over your lunch hour. Okay, if you haven't heard about Ingenuity Labs too much, but only know a little bit, we're now at 40 faculty members, which I think is amazing. We've brought together roughly 40 faculty members from across the campus, and I don't know how many graduate students at this point, well over 120 maybe, that are registered on projects that are happening through Ingenuity Labs. So we've grown quite a bit over the last several years. I think this is our fourth now Robotics and AI Symposium, which we usually have in the fall, but this year we decided to team up with CCECE. And so we've got the opportunity to visit us here today, but then also explore some of the talks that are happening with CCECE. And of course, one of the features of our symposiums over the last several years has been the debate. So welcome to debate number one. And we usually focus our debates on the two themes that are part of Ingenuity Labs, the AI sort of theme and the robotics theme. And so our first debate this morning is around AI, and I mean, what a year it's been, I think, for AI. And I don't think the hype and all of what has happened is lost on any of us here at Ingenuity Labs, especially as researchers that are trying to bring together the world of robotics and AI. And I wanted to start off just a brief intro, and I know we're a little bit over the time getting going, but just to say that for me, the topic is quite interesting. I think for many of the academics here, the topic of this debate here is quite interesting. We had a visitor on March 20th, and I don't know how many of you were here for that, but Ted Chiang visited us. And Ted Chiang, if you don't know, is an author. He's a sci-fi author, and he gave his perspective on AI and some of the things that have been happening over the last few years. And it struck me that he had a different perspective than a lot of us, and I think a lot of us thought he was going to get up and say some really positive things, and he kind of had a different take on it. I'm not going to do it justice, but maybe just to get the theme going for this debate, he kind of said, using AI to help you with your homework is like, you're an athlete and going to the gym and bringing a forklift in to help you lift the weights up and down, right? So it's not going to help you. And that was for me, an interesting analogy, and made me think about a lot of things. And I think today that's the topic we're going to discuss. So our panel debate question today is AI in education. Boosting learning or breeding laziness. And the format of the debate is friendly. It's friendly. We have opening arguments, so a few minutes each. 5 minutes each, 4 debaters, so that'll take us maybe the first 20 minutes. Then we're going to have a moderated discussion. I'll do my best to keep it going. We can eventually have some questions, I think, from the audience. Closing remarks at the end, and we'll have a debrief at the end where I think if people have a different opinion than the side they were stuck on, and we kind of force people to take a side, you can speak up at that point. I think it's a friendly debate in the sense that we can all then maybe come together at the end. So we've kind of assigned each panelist a position for the sake of the debate, but you'll be allowed to sort of express your points of view maybe a little more freely at the end, so knowing that. So on my far left here, we have Soumya Vajala. She's an associate research officer at the National Research Council of Canada, and she works in multilingual text processing and the Digital Technologies Research Center. So thank you, Soumya, for joining us. And so this is the boosting learning side, I should have said. So they're arguing on the boosting learning side for AI. And then we have Ryan Grant, who's an assistant prof here in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, and one of our Ingenuity Labs faculty members, and an expert in supercomputing. And so for the breeding laziness side, we have, whether this was a strategy or not, I'm not sure. I didn't pick the debate size this time, but we have two sort of education-related researchers. So Mary Ott, an assistant prof in the York Faculty of Education. She has a background in elementary school teaching, a special education specialist, and brings a passion for helping learners and educators. So thank you for joining us all the way from Toronto today. And then Richard Reeve, an associate prof of information and communication technology at the Queen's Faculty of Education, and also an affiliate member here at Ingenuity Labs. And I know, having had many conversations with Richard over the years, he has some really great things to contribute to this debate. So welcome all of you. So we're going to start with the opening arguments, and I think we'll work on the sort of left side forward. And we'll go maybe one, and then, so Somya, and then we'll go one to the other, and then we'll have Ryan and then Richard. Does that make sense?
You chose wisely.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. So I'm going to time because we don't want to have, too. Oh, thank you, Ramsey. So we have a poll. So as has been tradition, if you have your cell phone available, you can flip it open. There's a QR code, I think, on some of the papers that are on your chairs, if you can. We're going to have a poll just to see what the audience thinks beforehand. And then we'll redo the poll afterwards to see if things have shifted. So there's a QR code here, and people can see in live, and unfortunately my head may be in the way. But you should have another. Uh-oh, how's it doing? I see somebody smiling there. So. Oh no, it's breeding laziness. We have a lot of students in the audience, so I'm really curious to see what we think of the actual. Oh yeah. Thomas Sears, folks, my PhD students.
It's getting closer.
Look at that, 50-50, okay. Wow. For those who are just joining, come on in, find a seat. We're about to get started. Okay, so for the boosting, what do we call it? Boosting learning side, we'll let Somya go first. So you have 5 minutes, Somya.
Okay, I'll also have my clock. Okay, yeah. It's a fairly open topic, and it's not specified what education. Is it school education or college education? Is it teachers or students? So I'm going to take my stance for boosting productivity. I'd like to start with saying that AI in education is not really a new concept. Over the past few decades, we've been seeing it in the use of reading and writing assistance tools for language learning or for intelligent tutoring systems, digital learning platforms, automated assessment. It would not have existed if it is not boosting productivity of some sort for some people. So that's my opening argument. Some of these became better with generative AI in the recent years, and some of the use cases which we thought were just lab experiments became more practical these days. So when we look at whether AI is boosting productivity or not in education today, I think there are 3 aspects to it: teachers, students, and general administration and management. If we take teachers, I think I've recently read something from Microsoft in India. So they're doing a pilot with generative AI in government schools in India with a grassroots organization where the teachers are using these large language models for creating lesson plans, for creating videos, and developing exercises for the classes, for science classes, and in both English and regional languages. And the results of this pilot study showed that the teachers actually say it's making it more productive for them, and they're having a lot of time to engage with the students in the classroom, spending relatively lesser time looking for material. So, and the success of this project then led them to expand it to 100 more schools, government schools in India, in somewhat relatively remote places, not big cities. So I think there's a clear case for AI boosting productivity for teachers there. In terms of students, though, there are many ways in which students can use AI. You can look at using AI for getting more practice exercises or getting more explanations, personalized feedback. Or you can also use AI to let it do your own homework, like Ted Chiang said. So it depends on on how you are using AI. So in terms of getting personalized feedback or using more as an assistive technology, like say, for example, using automated speech recognition or machine translation or chatbots or things like that for making content more accessible to different groups of students, there is, I think, a clear case of for AI boosting productivity of the students and helping them. In terms of whether AI wants to do the homework of students or whether people are going to use AI in testing scenarios, what happens to the integrity of testing, these kind of, that's a different case. I'm not saying AI is going to boost learning in such cases. So there was a MIT study recently on using large language models for computing education, where students who used ChatGPT and the likes did way better in terms of answering the questions, but when asked for explanations, they did not do better. So I'm giving away one argument for my for the other team to argue against using AI. But again, I mean, with all new technology comes new problems. I think our way forward should be to adopt and improve the technology rather than arguing for not using it. So yeah, that's it from my side.
Okay, thank you, Tomia. All right, we move over to the breeding laziness side. So Mary, your opening remarks.
All right. In the spirit of a debate, to be a bit provocative, I'm going to be a little bit spicy today. Lay out some spicy questions and arguments. But first, I was just inspired by Francois' talk this morning. I think I can just drop the mic now. I think we all walk away from that. My top takeaway, anyway, is that humans and robots need experiential learning. I can hear Dewey and Piaget and Montessori, education pioneers of the early 20th century, rolling over in their graves right now. So, like, just drop the mic, go home. All right, spicy question number one. Is AI in education? There's different kinds of AI. I would say most that I've encountered are at best education adjacent, at worst education disruptive, even worse education profiteering. Following principles of user design, AI is not in education unless and until it is co-designed with teachers and learners. Let me give you two compelling examples of that. One is just technology in general. Recently, I've been able to study the implementation of a new curriculum for medical education in Canada. It resulted in 70% of residents in training say that it had a negative impact on their learning and their well-being. Technology played a massive and under the iceberg kind of hidden role in that. It was not co-designed with teachers and learners. Another pressing example in my world of early elementary literacy education and AI, I recently saw a demo by an LLM that was, attempted to be developed in-house to assess reading fluency. I watched in real time as the demonstrator showed the AI assessing a English first language reader perfectly, and then assessed an English second language speaker as having multiple errors in their oral read aloud. But I could tell with, my human elementary teacher practiced ear that they were reading it perfectly. They were just reading it with an accent. So that AI has not been designed with learners to do that training, right? Okay, all right. Spicy question number two, what is thinking? So I'm arguing on the side of AI breeding laziness, taking as my case large language models such as ChatGPT, and I would say there's nothing lazier than an LLM that rips off real human people's ideas and then calculates a probability of what to say next. And that's a nice party trick to generate text, but it's not real thinking. Spicy question number three, what is laziness? So let's be clear on what we mean by laziness. I think a standard definition would be a lazy person is one who avoids doing work or gets others to do it for them. But that is masking the real problem or set of problems. So from my experience, again, elementary teacher, special education specialist, most students aren't really lazy. They might be unmotivated, and I suspect we might have some back and forth about what are the causes of lack of motivation in learning and what to do about it. But the other problem I've learned that masquerades as laziness, and the one I want to raise awareness of here today is lack of skill, okay? So I'm studying how literacy educators are adapting to teaching writing post-ChatGPT, and I'm looking at high school and undergraduate education context because I want to know how it's going to impact reading and writing skills development. And so first let me say I'm trying to come to this with an open mind because my scholarly background as a multiliteracy scholar, tells me that digital and assistive technologies can expand accessibility and motivation and agency in learning. But I'm going to share a quote from a high school teacher in my study, and they're not alone in this perspective, okay? So this is the teacher speaking. The problem is my students are staying on the surface. We need to help them realize they have so much more potential, and we need to help them realize the importance of knowledge. Okay, so what's the root of the problem? The root of the problem is that knowledge is actively constructed. And reading and writing is a primary means that we have as humans to construct knowledge. And so the student who uses AI tools in a cut and paste approach to completing assignments, which is what a lot of students are doing these days, may make them look like lazy thinkers, but they really are, is they're not developing the deep conceptual understanding, critical thinking, and creativity. And so the high school teachers in my study are being confirmed by educators in undergraduate education. And so there might be the canaries in a coal mine of a growing quality learning gap in 21st century skills today.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Right on time. All right, we pass it over to the other side now. Ryan.
Okay, great. Checking my watch. All right, so let's go back to the definition of laziness, right? Someone who gets other people to do their work for them or doesn't want to do work themselves, right? So is someone who digs a hole with a backhoe instead of a shovel lazy? They did less work. They used a tool to get to the point that they needed to get to, and they did so effectively, right? They still have to have skill to use that tool. If we step back and we look at what we want, we actually want productivity. It's a major problem in Canada's economy right now. We need to be able to be more productive as a whole, right? If we look at AI as a tool instead of as a thing that's going to answer our questions for us, we can start actually conceptualizing how we can adapt education to work with AI. So I will agree, education needs to be adapted to work with AI better than it is today. That involves conscious creation of AI for educational pursuits. So if we talk about this for a second, knowledge is actively learned, right? But there's a disconnect in our current scholarly approach where we have to teach everybody the basics of everything before they can actually get to the meat of what they really want to do, right? How many undergraduates have been itching to do their fourth-year project since first year to say, hey, I really, really, really want to design that bridge. Why do I have to learn all this other mechanics stuff? And why do I have to go and learn thermodynamics and mech? And why do I have to go learn these things? They can't see the connection between the base concepts that they need to learn to understand the end goal. And when we look at AI, AI helps us bridge these gaps. If you use AI in terms of as a tutor, would we argue that tutors are ineffective for teaching right now? I don't think anybody in this room would say tutors are a bad thing, right? When we're using AI to help us learn faster about things, it can be effective. When we use AI to fill in our gaps of our knowledge so we can see the end construction that we want to have, that helps us a whole bunch in terms of boosting our learning. So for example, as a chemistry student, I want to learn more about viscosity. I don't need to understand all of the principles of computational fluid dynamics or fluid dynamics as a whole to be able to understand and look at an AI showing me what the effect of dragging a slider for viscosity is on a liquid flowing around a screen, right? An AI can fill in the gaps in my knowledge for that and show me to help me understand what a concept actually means. It's more experiential and visual learning than I could otherwise do, right? I could use this in civil engineering. Build a bridge. Okay, great. Now I'm going to learn why you pull rebar. Why do you pull rebar to put it under strain? Because it's more powerful that way. I don't need to understand all the mechanics of how the bridge works or how wind pushes against a bridge or frost heave happens to be able to help an AI show me what happens when I put different strains on my rebar, right? These are all areas that are very much not my area. I am an AI infrastructure person. I build big computers that make AI work, right? But I can understand how I bridge these concepts from one to the other to actually boost our learning as a whole, right? AI also has other areas that it can help us in. Getting close to time, but I'll just point out one last one before I go, which is you can also use AI as an instant feedback mechanism. So if you write something and you don't ask the AI to write it, I think we can all agree in this room, if you ask ChatGPT to write something for you, it's pretty obvious that ChatGPT wrote it and it's not necessarily the best solution, right? But you can ask ChatGPT to be an editor for you. Hey, here's this paragraph, it's on this topic. Please act as an expert and give me feedback as to what this 500-word essay is doing. And it will give you answers like, you didn't really have a punchy end line. There's no call to action at the end of your essay. Maybe the subject of the essay comes back completely wrong out of the AI. That's lending to the fact that maybe you've confused your reader somewhat as well, right? So when we present AI with human creations and either augment those human creations, or we take AI to fill in gaps so that we can understand what the end goal of our knowledge generation is, AI can really help boost our learning as a whole. We just need to be able to create and be willing to create AIs and teach them for the specific purpose of learning, right? Right now, we're just trying to figure out, hey, cool, Microsoft Word can auto-generate text for me. How would that be useful? Well, that's not a feature meant for the educational market. So we should be able to figure out, well, can it teach me more about how sentences are structured or how I should be writing? That's much more useful in the AI field. So I think AI as a whole can definitely boost our learning, can act in traditional roles that we already have for education today. And in the future, we can actually enhance our learning to get to end concepts so students can directly see why they're learning what they're learning, so they get an entire experiential experience on learning the end concepts and understand why they're learning the basics and where they're applied.
Okay, amazing, thank you. And last but not least, Richard,
I don't know.
Breeding Laziness side.
I don't know that I'll be perfectly on 5 minutes like everyone else.
All right.
So I've got my cue card, so I don't have a Biden moment, which I'm quite capable of. Yeah. So So I wrote skeptical. So I am skeptical of AI, and I'll talk about why. I appreciate the points on both sides. Really appreciate Mary's detailed take-up of the problem. But I've been teaching for 30+ years. I've been in and out of classrooms and research labs, producing software and putting it into practice in classrooms. And I have to say, it has been an underwhelming experience to see it work long enough to write the paper, to go to the conference, but then to fizzle as it tried to scale. And so I kind of want to talk at that level because my basic point is I don't know that AI is going to get a chance to make us lazy. I don't know that we're going to implement it in a way that's going to be effective enough that we would think it to be in that category. So I've already talked through that one. So I think it's going to fall short. And I think we have to understand educational technology in terms of, there's several models out there, but they all kind of follow a similar idea where a technology just replaces the old technology. We use the same strategies, the same idea. You know, you can use a pencil for that, or you could use a computer, but you're really not doing you're not adding any value. If you are adding value, that's augmenting. And so there's a lovely model by Joan Hughes from the University of Texas called the RAT model. Everybody hates the name, but replacement, augmentation, and transformation. And so that's what all these excited people about AI are on about, right? It's exciting. Oh, look at what's going to happen to education. Things are going to change. There's going to be all these great events happening for student learning and for teachers and for education. And I am just completely skeptical of that position. It needs a lot to happen for transformation to transpire in the classroom around technology use. And there was a few surveys of teachers recently, and what the teachers were asking for was it was between 30 and 50%, and they were saying we need policy, we need rules could you come and give us some rules about how this thing can be used in our classrooms? And what they were actually asking, in my view, is to keep it in the A and no more, right? Do not change what's going on in my school. Do not change what's going on in my classroom. Keep it inside the lines and keep it driving straight forward. And so a technology like the smartboard was supposed to transform the way education happened, especially for math teachers. Those are the teachers that were the most excited about smartboards. And it didn't happen. Mary's talking just before about people not buying the bulb, right? Not replacing the bulb. I know the room that I teach at West Campus has holes in the wall where the smartboard used to be because it was not used in the transformative, powerful ways that we thought it would. It was basically just replacing existing, cheaper technology. And so they went back to that, and that's the way we tend to go. And so you need to, and I think Ryan said education needs to adapt, and that's what would need to happen. But it is a huge hill to climb for education to be able to implement this into the classroom. I will say, I think the first ones to get lazy are going to be the teachers. That the ability to have a lesson quickly made, and everybody says it's efficient, is just like the gateway drug for them to allow the students to use it. That there's just going to be this whole efficiency idea as opposed to understanding your students, knowing your students, and developing the kinds of lessons that actually work with a class of children.
You're
pretty
right
close.
on time, yeah,
Okay.
well done. Okay, opening arguments done. We've heard ideas on both sides, and now is sort of the middle portion of the debate where we give the opportunity on each side to sort of respond to things they heard on either side before we engage the audience, right? So does anyone want to put up their hand first and respond to something that they heard and provide a feedback? Okay, so maybe we'll go first with Mary and then Soumya.
Okay, so respectfully, I heard the words adaptation and productivity. So my question about adaptation is, why does education need to adapt to you? That you're not in education, by my definition. Number two, productivity. Is the purpose of education productivity? I'll leave that as an open question. I'll answer it at the end. Thank you.
Okay. Soumya?
The purpose of education is not productivity, but if a teacher has to handle like hundreds of students, they need to come up with some ways to make it better for them as well as for the students, to give enough attention to the students. So in such cases, they need to have some ways of boosting productivity in terms of handling the class, grading, and things like that, so that there may be more interaction between the student and teacher. So that's my take on it. Productivity is not the end goal, but it's one of the things that lead to the end goal.
Ryan?
Okay, I'll frame the statement a little bit better in terms of productivity. Education is a pathway to an end goal. The vast majority of people do not stay in the education system like professors sitting up on this stage throughout their lives. They go off and work in the economy. The end goal is that they will use productivity tools like AI. If we don't teach them to them, they will eventually use them. The economy needs productivity boost, and if we don't have a productivity boost, we'll lose out to other countries. So the end goal is productivity of the graduates that we have in their industrial pursuits, not necessarily productivity inside the classroom. I would also say that education does need to adapt to the outside world, respectively. Respectfully, I would say that we had to adapt to computers. That was a thing that happened, and we needed to adapt to them as well. Not everything comes from an education-centric point of view. I should put reference, I'm from industry, so I come from ag education in a very industrial point of view. But from that perspective, industry is really driving what our students spend 40 years of their lives doing instead of the 18 years that they might be in education. So we're basically forced to adapt to the larger market as a whole. I don't think that education is entirely in the pursuit of only driving an industrial solution at the end. So I don't want to say that not all degrees are useful, that a degree would ever be useless because it doesn't have a direct industrial application. Education has worth in and of itself, but we have to keep in mind that the vast majority of our students that are here are to do so to be able to be trained for an industry application thereafter.
Wow. Anybody want to respond? We've heard the word productivity a few times. And I'm going to jump in and just sort of ask the question maybe about what people think they mean by productivity. And I think that's, on one side, like there's a big assumption that AI is inherently going to boost productivity, right? And then on the other side, it's possibly that productivity is not the objective here. Are we talking about the same kind of productivity?
So if we're talking about productivity in terms of work generated, income generated, then that might be a intended aim of achieving an education, but that's not actually what education is about. Education is fundamentally about a relationship that allows for a co-construction of knowledge. And so if there's not a relational element, if there's not something that improves agency, motivation, sense of belonging in learning, then learning is not going to happen. So those are kind of like the root nutrients of learning and motivation in general. So like, let's just put productivity aside for the space of this conversation, I would say. Again, it's laziness is not the real problem of not getting enough work done or not doing work or having somebody else do your work for you. It's about, do you actually have the skills to think, to create, to be, to relate to others, to do work in the world? And if not, why are we here?
Sonia.
So I think I want to say something about that, and also to what Richard said towards the end about AI may actually make teachers lazy first, because I think they're both related. So I think we're making an assumption here that when somebody is using AI, they stop thinking. That need not necessarily be true. Like let us say I'm using AI in a classroom to generate some exercises, and ChatGPT gives me some exercises. That does not necessarily mean I'm just going to take them and directly use it in the class without thinking about its appropriateness or whether it's sufficient. Do I need something else? And it does not also mean that the teachers don't have the ability to think on their own. So I want to get back again to this productivity argument, saying it's possible to use AI to the extent that is necessary, that is useful for us, without becoming lazy or without losing the ability to critically think ourselves. It's true both for teachers and students, because it's not just what we learn in the class. Students also have a life outside and they look at the world outside. So I think we should not underestimate the ability of teachers or students to do some kind of critical thinking beyond what they learn in the classroom, with AI or without AI. So yeah, that's my opinion on that.
Anyone else want to jump in? No?
I can formally define productivity as I mentioned.
You used it a lot, so I'm kind of looking at you, Ryan.
So productivity is a simple formula. Productivity equals the gross domestic product, or the value of all the goods that a country accumulates, divided by the number of populi in that country, so number of people. It's literally gross domestic product. What is the productivity of our people? How much do one worker create in value per year? And I make that argument not from an educational perspective, but from a recognition that everybody goes through education and we have a very highly educated workforce here in Canada so that we can be rather productive. So if we have a new tool that's going to create productivity in our industrial side, why would we not teach people how to interact and grow with this tool? Because the reality is that they're going to be learning over their lifetime with it. So productivity matters to the end goal of education and the goal of lifetime education. If we don't think about how we actually apply the things that we learn, then we haven't actually used the tool effectively, right? So I kind of look at it as why wouldn't we teach people how to use power tools in a trade, right? Let's let them use a circular saw instead of a manual saw in trades so that they understand how to be a productive worker when they then graduate. AI, I look at it as just that. It is a tool. It can be misused. It can breed laziness amongst people, but if used correctly, it should be able to enhance your learning as a whole and boost it.
Pass it to Richard and then Mary.
Sure. I taught for a long time, and there's a lot of students, and I remember one who said, "This isn't very productive. You know, we should do this differently." Everyone else, we were, in the research we were doing, we always marveled at how they just loved the ideas, loved the knowledge they were creating, loved what they were doing. And it's interesting I'm on what would be the Luddite side over here, because I said to Josh last night, I read a little bit about being a Luddite, because you're casting me as one. You know, they cared about the quality of their lives. And it wasn't just about hating the technology. It was about, you know, enjoyment. And the worry about it becoming just about productivity. And, you know, we've used technology, like, you know, we know our economy. Technology has helped to move it along. You know, every sort of big move in our economy has been another sort of new technological invention. And yes, AI could very much be that. But we have to pay attention to the people and what it's going to do to their lives. And we can't just do it out of hand about making life more productive, like making the economy more productive.
Okay, thanks. So we're now at the 19 minutes left mark, and I do want to leave some time for the audience to jump in, because I think we have an audience full of people who are both educators in industry and also students, right, who can tell us really what they think about whether it's boosting their learning or possibly breeding laziness amongst themselves. So I'm going to give we've said 2 to 4 minutes at the most, sort of give your closing remarks each, and then we'll open it up to the audience. And at that time, too, our panelists are welcome to sort of express maybe more freely and less on either side, some honest opinions. So maybe we'll go in sort of the reverse order this time. So I'm going to let Richard go first.
Sure. Am I just everywhere?
Closing argument. You can argue against you if you'd like. Directly.
Was it Phil
comments.
Donahue? What were the fights?
Yeah. I'll keep you apart.
The part, and I don't know that this is about laziness, but the part that concerns me, because you know, I was an elementary school teacher to start with, and it was the community learning to be with each other was part of the hidden curriculum of what went on in those classrooms. And I keep hearing about personalized learning and individualized learning, and that's what school will become, because that's what AI can do so well. And my challenge, or wondering, and I would like help, is what does the design of those schools look like if it's about efficiency, personalization, and individualization?
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Ryan.
So I'll just respond very quickly to something Richard said. I don't think that I'm arguing necessarily that AI is about personalization and targeting specific students, because I think teachers do that best in terms of learning what capabilities those students have. AI, you can think about it as an educational assistant or a tutor. It's a tool to be used to enhance your learning as a whole. And although I struggle with the fact that productivity in our economy isn't the end goal, it is easily measurable versus a lot of other soft skills that are adapted in a classroom. So I would say that AI has excellent capabilities to be able to boost our learning as long as we use it right. And I think it's going to take a little while to learn how to use those tools really effectively in the classroom, and that's going to include educational research on how best to apply them and learn how students learn with them as well.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Closing remarks from Mary.
Okay. So first of all, to the accusation that I am a Luddite, proudly so. There's an article, I encourage you to look it up. It's a research paper. The title is quite catchy. It's called "The Pen is Mightier Than Keyboard." In it, I think university students were compared on a test whether they handwrote notes based on a lecture or they transcribed them verbatim on a computer. I think we could extend that study today to reading an AI-generated summary of the lecture. Which students did best on the test? Look it up. What is the purpose of education? I opened that door in your minds for you to think on. Here's my purpose, because my job is a literacy educator. So my job is to teach reading, writing, and other communication skills and how to teach those skills in elementary education, foundational learning. Language is how we think. Folks, we can't get away from that. So I'm not teaching this for the purpose of producing more productivity in terms of content or helping kids and folks get better jobs, even though those are nice goals, they're laudable. But my job, my purpose, is to develop minds. My job is to develop the large language models of my students' minds, capable of curiosity, creativity, synthesizing concepts, and generating and having genuinely new ones. And if AI can't help me to do that, then it has no place in education.
Wow, I love the use of AI terms in the, including foundational. Wow. All right, Soumya.
Okay, so when I started thinking about this topic, AI in education, I was thinking more from a student perspective in terms of so I've been in these classes where I was teaching students who don't come up with a whole lot of computer science courses but want to get into data science. And I've been in these scenarios where I'm not always available to spend personal time with each and every student, and it would have been very helpful to have some kind of a assistant to help them with, say, programming exercises, help them with where they're making errors and things like that. So I was thinking of more of those kind of things of where AI can be useful there, like our students writing research papers for the first time and having some kind of editorial support needed for them. So those were my ideas initially, but this Microsoft study that I referred to in the beginning about how AI is helping teachers, that convinced me that actually AI in education has the potential to boost the productivity for both teachers and students, not just students. Of course, with caveats, everything comes, nothing is perfect and it's not black and white. I mean, now that it's closing remarks, I can actually talk about things being in gray shade, right? Like not. So yes, if used properly, like my partner in arguing for boosting learning says, if used properly, if used appropriately, AI can boost learning. And we need to come up with strategies to, by we, I mean teachers, students, people from different research areas, educators, everybody. We need to come up with policies and strategies to use AI properly so that it boosts learning in the context of education for everyone, for teachers, for students, also for the whole education ecosystem. So yeah, that's
amazing. Okay, we're going to open it up to the audience. But before we open it up to the audience, we're going to do another poll. Right, Ramsey? He's giving me a thumbs up. So we're going to see if the arguments you heard today for either side somehow has changed. And now, can somebody remind me where we were at the last poll?
48-52.
52 for laziness?
Yes.
Yes, I thought so.
Ooh.
So we'll give it some time. If you can repeat the poll, it's on your page.
Oh, come on.
What's happening? I can't
Put your phones down.
People don't change opinions after debates, apparently.
Well, maybe I.
Apparently not. Oh, yes they do.
Ooh.
Okay, that doesn't add up. Oh,
That's a software error, probably.
I mean, I don't know the demographics exactly in the audience, but the audience is largely made up of probably scientists, engineers, a lot of people working in robotics and AI, and the fact that it's 50-50 is somewhat interesting to me.
It's not.
Oh, what is it now?
No.
No, it's good.
Well, it's pretty close to 50-50 though, right?
Interesting.
Whoa.
Yeah. All right, I saw like a whole swath of hands go up as I said we're going to answer questions from the audience. And the first one was over here, and then I'll come up to the front here. We got a microphone coming your way from Ramsey. And feel free to ask controversial questions.
All right, so I have an input before that. You know, Bertrand Russell wrote a proof of 300 pages of 1 + 1 = 2. And 1 + 1 = 2 is a very intuitive fact that anyone can do without knowing the philosophy of all what Bertrand Russell had done. So what I'm trying to say over here is that AI is kind of pushing the envelope on what is intuition and what is not to some extent. And we should be careful of, like as educators, we should be careful of choosing what do we deem as intuition and what we don't. So calculators, we kind of got used to them. And like you don't really need to do mental math anymore. But what happens if the calculators are not there? And that kind of takes me to another point is what is the purpose of the educational system? And what this kind of impacts what is your notion of productivity. There was an educational, theorist called Yoram Harpaz who kind of said that any educational system is an ideology that tries to produce a person, either a person of culture or a person who kind of contributes to an industry, or a person like an individual who can stand alone on their own. So we kind of also need to take into consideration what are the limits of AI, because what we have right now is not really artificial intelligence, it's mostly data-driven, it is a statistical, collective intelligence. So the limits of that is actually the combination of the data that you have input to it. So the best you could get out of it is the best combination possible. Of course, what we're seeing is like the beautiful combinations that nobody has thought of before. But we kind of want to, if we want to kind of go beyond these limits, a little bit of human creativity that is not present in the data would be required. So
do we have a question for the panel?
Yeah, my question is, yeah, sorry, it was just an input, a comment, really, not just a question.
Sure. Thank you.
So my question would be, how would you choose to define what is intuition and what is not? Because in engineering, things are going very fast, and we really need to push intuition to a very high degree. So my question is to the Breeding Laziness team.
Okay.
Yeah. What are the metrics for intuition?
I did not study that.
Can that be measured?
That's a good.
So your concern is what should be in school, what the curriculum should be. Is that basically? Because I actually, I agree. Like, honestly, so they traded me, right? Like I was supposed to be over there, and then last week they said, no, I don't care if you've got lots of notes about that. You now have to argue against it, right? So that actually happened. But this idea that somehow you had a moment there where you said, you know, the education system should function differently. It should be more in line with what we need. And you know, the idea that it was 200-year-old design, and we still have it in every neighborhood, and we're still basically doing the same thing 200 years later, seems crazy and needs to change. But getting that to happen in schools is phenomenally difficult. There are so many structures working against it: assessment, the curriculum. The ministry had a website before the pandemic, and the website fell apart. But they had a website that had one of the models on it. It wasn't the RAP model, and I always marveled that they were promoting transformation, because transformation said we can get something. If you use this technology, we can get something in schools that we couldn't get otherwise, right? We have to use this technology to get this new kind of learning, this new way of doing school. And the ministry, the Ontario ministry, is promoting it. And then they turn around and say, follow the curriculum, do these assessments, don't get off the path, right? They don't have a strategy for transformation, and they're promoting it on their website. It made absolutely no sense. So we have to figure out how to make our way to what Ryan was talking about, right? That there is a need for us to be functioning in a different way in schools. And that maybe this is a tool that can get us there. Maybe these are designs. The part of that is a struggle is we are just at the beginning of this technology, and we're letting it in the door without really knowing what it is or what it's going to do. And so I can come back over this side and say, I'm kind of against it, because until we know what it is, we can't just, let it run amok in the classrooms. Sorry, I'll stop.
Okay, thanks. We had a question right here, and then we'll go back to Brian at the back.
Thanks. My question is for the Luddites. So I'm inclined to agree with the AI breeds laziness argument, but how do you propose we move forward? So it seems naive to simply ban all AI tools in the classroom. AI is not going anywhere. It's going to be used regardless. If you disagree that, as you said, why does education have to adapt to you? If you disagree that education needs to adapt to AI, what do you propose as an alternative? And then for the pro-AI camp, you mentioned that AI has great capabilities if you use it right. But how do you propose avoiding students from using it wrong? Like just getting the answers to questions without having to think for themselves, which I think the argument that it sort of doesn't promote actual learning is very fair. And AI is a lot more powerful than just a Google search. So yeah, those are my questions.
Okay, so thank you for the question, because there were some burning issues that I did want to touch on. So first of all, back to the problem of what are we adapting to? Yeah, students already know how to use these tools, right? Like kids in elementary school know how to use ChatGPT. If you have a computer in a classroom and a Wi-Fi connection, you have access to it. Nobody's banning it. It's not like teachers are like, teachers do not want to be the AI detectives. They're concerned in developing relationships and helping students learn, right? So that's the concern. You got to center like learning and relationship, number one. How do we help do that? That comes down to like curriculum assessment and pedagogy. And so I think a lot of times, like what some of the other people were talking about in terms of education was large scale, cast of 1,000 undergraduate courses. I think that's probably people's most recent experience of education. It's the least effective kind of education, right? Unless you're hopefully by that point in your journey, you are a self-directed learner. And so that's what allows you to function in that space because you have the least amount of relationality in terms of the teaching-learning relationship and the feedback and everything that's implicated in that. High school and elementary and secondary school is what gets you to that place of being a self-directed learner. So if you're assuming that kids who are 8-year-olds are self-directed learners, then you're dead wrong. If you're assuming that a high school student is ready to function as a self-directed learner, in most cases, you're dead wrong. They don't have the emotional and cognitive maturity to do that. That is the process of an education up to that point that gets you to the point where you are now. So you have to think like, sure, I can use AI, and teachers are using AI to, as a coach and a collaborator. And the literature tells us on using so again, different AIs in education. I'm not sure, does anyone think that kids having cell phones in schools right now is contributing to their mental health in a positive way? Or to their learning? Do we want to set of hands up on that? Can we do a poll on that? No. We got some regulation issues. We've got some policy issues for sure, right? But back to the question of pedagogy and learning, and kids are already learning. They know how to use the tools. In most cases, when it comes to technology these days, the advice to teachers is follow your students and take a design-centered approach where you're learning and iterating and learning by trial and error, and they're kind of leading the way, right? The problem is not learning how to use the tools. The problem is learning. Are they developing fundamental critical thinking skills, reading skills? The other thing that the AI literacy literature tells us to do is to, give students output and have them evaluate the content, evaluate the conceptual arguments. What my collaborator is finding at U of T is that they can't. They look at AI-generated writing and they think it's great. It sounds great. They don't understand the conceptual underpinnings of it to be able to poke the holes and the flaws in it and improve it. So this is the problem that we're dealing with. It's not a made-up problem. It's not in my head. This is what's happening right now. Ontario used to be number 3 in the world on PISA international test rankings for science and literacy and math, right? Those 3 things. We're top in the world. We had one of the best education systems in the world here. There's a massive investment in teacher professional learning to make that happen. We have a massive divestment in education right now at the same time that we have all of these new things flooding in and disrupting the system. And so I ask you to look at your undergraduate classes right now, look at the quality of the learning, and if you have any questions about it, I'm telling you, canary in the coal mine, this is what is happening in terms of what is coming, and the tsunami in terms of what is entering your undergraduate programs right now.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know if we quite got to the how are we going to deal with this in education part, but I think maybe I'll pass it to the other side then, because how are we going to deal with it in education part in the sense that it's not always going to be good, right? And you're going to have misuse. So I think that was the second part of your question. I think I kind of want to hear that too.
Okay, so...
Because it actually applies to both sides, right? And then maybe Richard can go, yeah.
So I think the way that we need to think about it is that if you can have access to an answer for a piece of information and knowledge that you can instead use but may not know, for example, on an exam, right? Write the definition of the following term. Guess what? That's done. It's gone. People can look it up in 2 seconds. Why would we know the definition of the term? It's instead demonstrate that term to me. So let's get to a concrete example. Define viscosity, right? There's a textbook definition for it. You can regurgitate the words on an exam, and great, it got you a mark on your final exam, right? Instead, now with AI, we can say demonstrate to me how you would get to something that has a viscosity of engine oil. Show me, right? That's something that we can't do in a traditional paper exam, but might be a new way to interact with our world around us, right? So how do we end up using AI properly as a tool and we don't misuse it? Get to understanding, right? That's the end goal of education in the first place. Form an understanding, become able to think around new problems, and assess work, right? If we can get to that point, then it doesn't matter what tools we're using to get there. If we can get there faster with understanding using new tools, great. So the answer to how do we use the tools wrong is we use them in a way that we're just testing, not necessarily understanding, but regurgitation. And what we really want to get to is understanding rather than just regurgitating, I said this to you, tell it back to me. Did you really understand it? No, demonstrate to me that you understood it. We might be able to use AI to demonstrate understanding in new ways that we haven't already conceptualized in education. You can't go out and do a laboratory test with every single undergraduate in a class for every single person, form the following chemical. But you might be able to do that with AI, where they walk through the AI and how to do it to form their understanding.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone want to, okay, I saw Brian Dodo maybe stand up first and then we'll go to work towards the back.
Many hands.
Yeah, there were a lot of hands that went up and I just happened to see Brian right in front of me, so I'm going with it.
Thanks, Ramsey. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I'm not an academic, I'm a designer. And, well, I graduated in the 1900s, as kids now say it. But when you look at it, I've heard this argument before that we're having today. But then it was about computers, whether computers were going to make people lazy. And I remember as a designer, I mean, everything was mechanical. And we left a lot of designers behind because they refused learn computers. And obviously, AI is at its infancy at the moment. And obviously, there's a lot of unknowns. But I would say that by not adopting it, people are going to be left behind. We've adopted it in our design practice, where we use AI for all sorts of things. And why I say this, speaking to educators, is that we take on interns, not from Queen's, but from the technical colleges and universities. And one of my biggest problems is that a lot of the interns we get don't know how to use modern tools. So we have to start from zero every time. And so we have all these people learning stuff from the 1900s, like I'm saying, but are not learning the new tools that are being used at the moment. So my question, I guess, is, as educators, both sides, what do you think the impact would be of ignoring the fact that this exists and it should be used and it's going to be used? And by letting your students pass on this opportunity, what do you think that impact would be? Thanks.
Okay, let's start maybe on this side, the impact of ignoring this technology or this opportunity.
I think this technology is here to stay, so it's it's hard to quantify the impact, but I think we have to come up with ways to teach people how to use these technologies appropriately, rather than saying it's okay if you don't use it, or saying use it or perish. So, I mean, I don't have a strong opinion towards the extremes on this. My take is more of helping people figuring out how to work with these technologies.
Okay, Richard?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, the conversation about what should be in the curriculum. Like, that's basically what this is about. And the struggle is, like, I teach a course and I bring in the manager from the local school board. And he puts up a slide and basically says, I have $8 a student for innovation. What should I do? And, you know, it's a non-starter. There's nothing you can do with $8 per head. And that is the problem. We underfund schooling to a great extent. And the other side of this is, if you're going to spend some money, like the smartboard problem, and I did have, Gretch, so sorry that I named us the Luddites, by the way. But he basically called me a Luddite about, I don't know, 14 years ago. And I was sort of like, I just don't know how these smartboards are going to get used. And he's like, they are the future. You don't understand. And I just wish I could find him and just put that right back at him. But figuring out what to put in the curriculum, if you're going to spend some money, you better get it right. And I just ask you to tell me, what should we buy? What AI is the right AI to put into schools that is not going to disappear in 4 or 5 years and not be sustainable? And suddenly industry changes their mind about what is the skill that you need to have. And we look stupid because we chose completely wrong. So that's the conundrum that education is in when they play to industry for curriculum. And that's why we let it ride up into the colleges and so forth. So it's closer to industry, it's closer to the moment of use. Yeah, the previous question, I did have a point, and I just want to make sure I say it. So Principal Wolf, remember Principal Wolf, the previous principal of Queen's? He used to come to the Faculty of Education every year, and every year he would turn and say, why don't you have a lab school yet? You know, wouldn't it be great to have a laboratory school here? And that's basically a concept of experimentation. You know, we try things out, we move them out into the world, which is a hard thing to do, but it is at least a place to play with ideas. Kind of like this. You play with robots, you get to develop them. We get to make snow cones. Like, it's really great. And why don't we have a school, why don't we have a place with children where we can develop these uses? So they at least make some sense in terms of our understanding of how to use them. Even better is if you can actually form alliances with schools and school boards where you can do co-design. I think Mary talked about co-design with teachers. Because design is really about context, right? You have to understand the context of the use. And you're doing that, right? That's what this morning's presentation was about, trying to map and figure out the terrain and so forth. That's what we need for schools as well, is we need to understand the terrain of a classroom and how to work it with a teacher and with a curriculum and so forth. So we need those kinds of research avenues happening for education so that AI can have a chance to be successful in the schools.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to hear from some students. So I see a lot of prof hands up, but I'd like to hear from some students. Is AI boosting your productivity? And I'm sure what productivity means, because I heard a lot of productivity, but I'm still not quite certain. Or is it breeding laziness? So sure, there we go.
Mac here. So actually, I'm not a real student, but I do have a question for the boosting learning side. I really like this discussion. I'm a mother of 2 students, and at the same time, I'm a person who uses ChatGPT almost daily, so I really support both of your side. My question actually, I ever read a story telling far future, the human-machine interface technology will allow to load all human being knowledge into babies' memory once they are born. So my question to the boosted learning side would be, if you have such an opportunity to load all the memory, all the knowledge into your memory, would you choose to do so, or you choose to learn everything the hard way that partially contribute to who we are? Thanks.
All right, now we're talking.
That's quite the sci-fi question. Would I, as a baby, want to know that I was limited in my form? Maybe not. Maybe if I could become, more knowledgeable later on. I will say this, that I think that one danger to AI and that we need to be aware of is the fact that AI is already demonstrating that it can at least mimic the capabilities of junior folks who just graduated from university. It can pass the bar in law school. It can, pass a basic med school test. It can do these sort of things by answering those types of technologies. So then the question becomes, as a young person, if you don't have the ability to be able to take an entire subject and become a world expert in that area, right? When do you have something that is valuable in the space? If my company can just go off and hire a whole bunch of junior engineers that are free, they're all AI, I pay some amount per month on it, right? And only have senior people around, that doesn't work in the long term, right? It works in the here and now. Companies aren't exactly famous for their forethought. Right? So if you look at the number of people in the AI space, or in my particular subspecialty of making AI infrastructure, there aren't a lot of people teaching anybody anything right now, because they've all been hired away by industry, because industry's thinking about their next quarter and making their shareholders happy, rather than how do I get people in 20 years? That's a somebody else problem, right? I'll hire that today. So should you be able to load all of human knowledge into your brain? I hope so, especially if we get things where, junior people aren't as valued in the future. We're going to have to figure out some way in education to be able to make people experts by the time that they get out there in the world, so that they have some value to give back. So that's a thing that really scares me about AI, right? Hey, it can boost your learning, but now you're in competition with the AI, right? So how do we beat the AI? Maybe it's download all of human knowledge into your brain. I don't know what I'd do with all of human knowledge. I'd love to learn more about history and some of the things that I'm really interested in, but I don't know if I need to know the ins and outs of professional plumbing. right? But
it's,
yeah, I just think that we need to be really careful with it as well. We need to think about what the goal of education is. And hey, maybe there's a future in which you just get all of human knowledge in the future, or that AIs do everything for you, and so you don't have to worry as much because everything's automated for you. And then you can achieve education for the purpose of joy and understanding things and learning more about ethics and the things in society that humans do best.
I think we better let an educator who may be obsolete, if we can just upload everything to our brain, speak.
Knowledge is an active construction. You can't, it's not knowledge. like stuff in your brain doesn't tell you what to do with it or how to use it, or like let alone like work your body. So like, let's relate this to robotics for a second. I don't think, Francois, you're looking for a postdoc who's downloaded everything there is to know about AI or even robotics into their brain, right? You're looking for somebody who can work in the field. He's nodding for the rest of you at the back, right? He's agreeing with me. So like, you have to understand the problem. Right, engineers? Like, understand the problem. And it's not about downloading some content into your brain and all of a sudden you know what to do with that. I mean, I love that scene in The Matrix, but that's never gonna work. You want another sci-fi reference, let's think about Data. You know, that's taking me back in terms of Data the robot in Star Trek. What was his biggest problem? You know, he was the boy that didn't know how to like feel. He didn't have a heart. like we're not even talking about like emotion right now, right? Like that's part of knowing what and how to do things. So, yeah.
Okay, quickly, Richard wants to say something.
Yeah, I just had two pushbacks, and I'm forgetting them now. See,
That's okay.
That's the Biden moment.
That's
right
a Biden moment came.
No.
All right, it's
Yeah.
all good. You can come back to it. You can come back to it. Okay, I want to hear from some students. Like anybody using AI, and okay, Milad at the back. He's like itching to stand up. He can't. Using AI and think it's totally okay that they're skipping the process and just using it to do their homework. I don't know.
So as a student,
oh, sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. It's okay. As a student, you know, I strongly relate to both sides of the panel here, and it leads me to ask the question: what does the panel think is the actual relationship between these two concepts? Because at least to me, they don't seem completely disjoint. They don't live on opposite sides of let's say, a linear spectrum. And an example of that is it's possible to have a less productive learning experience while also being incredibly motivated to learn. And an example of that is, let's say, in the past when technology was more scarce, we see that in comparison to today's society. So my question to the panel really is like, where does AI fit into this, and how does it disrupt sort of the relationship between learning efficiency and laziness within the population?
Who wants to? Soumya, go for it. You look like you're itching to say something. So.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to answer that question of what exactly is the relationship between boosting learning and breeding laziness. But we've been talking about something similar over the course of the past 1 hour. Although we took stance, it's a spectrum. It's possible to boost learning, breed laziness, something in between. So again, like I said before, I think it's something ongoing. Like as time progresses and as we use more AI in the classroom or outside the classroom for learning, we need to figure out what is the right balance between boosting learning and not breeding laziness. And I think it is possible. Maybe not with ChatGPT, maybe with something else, but over a period of time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Richard, did you want to say something?
Well, I'll just do a plug for research that I continue to be involved in, which is learning might be the actual thing that's extinct, that we have to move beyond. And that there's, the transformation is to actually turn our schools into knowledge building environments, places where new knowledge and understanding of knowledge is what's at hand. And if we did that, we might rethink the place of a technology like AI. But as long as we have it as sort of this weird production place, you know, for jobs that don't exist anymore, then we have this struggle to kind of figure it all out.
Interesting point, for sure. Okay, Mary, quickly.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So there's different kinds of AIs. I've been talking about large language models, right? So I'm going to limit the scope of my comment to that. All of you here have a large language model in your head, and that is why and how you can be here. LLMs are designed to simulate that kind of learning. What happens if we constrain opportunities for younger people younger than you, your children, to develop their own large language models? Okay, that's just the question that I'm raising.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Who's got the mic? Or Milad got it there? Okay, good. Yeah.
Hey, okay, so I myself, I am a very avid AI user. Like on a daily basis, I use ChatGPT, I use different AI models. So I have 2 monitors on my desk, and one of them is ChatGPT all the time. So, and I believe—
This is not uncommon here, by the way. I've seen this. Yeah.
So a lot of my colleagues are actually the same, like they do the same thing. So one thing that I believe is that, well, change is scary. Like 100 years ago, people used to ride horses, now we drive cars. And I believe the transition from horses to cars was probably scary. 100 years ago, when the transistors were actually introduced, like before that, people were using like vacuum tubes, and it was a difficult time to like change from vacuum tubes to transistors. Like people were actually pushing back. So my theory is that change overall is scary. Now, if you look at the classroom has been more or less the same for the past 200, 300 years. So essentially, yes, people used to, like we used to write on like blackboards and use chalk. Nowadays, we use whiteboards. And pretty much that's the only difference. Like, sure, we use PowerPoints, we use projectors, but the thing is, like, I believe education has not changed changed drastically in the past 200 years or so. So personally, I use AI because I believe it makes my work more efficient. Is it making me lazier? Sometimes, yes. Am I guilty of asking ChatGPT to write my supervisor an email? Yes, I am.
By the way, he uses it to write you an email, too.
That's the thing. That's the thing. So yes, I asked ChatGPT to write me an email to Ali, and Ali probably asked ChatGPT to summarize that email into a 1-sentence prompt. And then so basically, it's just a conversation between AIs just back and forth. Yes, that is making me lazier in a sense, but do I use it to boost productivity? Like Ryan, you did mention quantifying productivity. Yes, personally, I believe like I don't have to write a program that like takes ChatGPT like a few seconds to write. I could write it myself, sure, but it would take me like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So asking ChatGPT to like do that job for me, and then I could just do the debugs, just do the debugging, or just making it, I don't know, just tweaking it a little bit, that would be more productive for me in my workforce than just to write it like all along. Sure, I know how to do that, but I don't have to, and I believe AI is helping me in that sense. Now, actually, ChatGPT, like they're actually introducing different features to do that. Like you could ask ChatGPT to, hey, modify this code like this, or do that, or do this, and actually my code is giving me this error, try to fix that. So basically they're introducing these features into it. Now, the way that I would like to look at AI and LLMs is that, well, it's a tool that enables me to be more productive in my work and spend more time on the things that matter instead of doing like the legwork just to like write the code. So my proposition is that instead of fearing AI, instead of like basically being afraid of that it might breed laziness in students, how about actually teaching them how to use it efficiently? So this is actually a conversation that I had with Professor Michael Greenspan, my co-supervisor, a few weeks ago. So we were discussing whether or not we should be afraid of AI or actually embrace it. Like, I personally believe that if we were to like teach students and actually design a course, teaching them how to use it efficiently and effectively, it would be much better than to just put it aside all along. So that is my personal opinion, and I would like to know your opinions on this. Like, do you think Well, I personally think it makes my work more efficient. It makes me more efficient. Sure, there are ways that it makes me lazier, and apparently a lot of people, like, we're all guilty of it. But I think it would be able to help us in the long run if we were to, like, just embrace it instead of just being afraid of it. And again, I reiterate, change is scary.
Okay, so I'm going to use my large language model and take that speech that we just got, and I'm going to summarize it for you, just like ChatGPT. And I'm going to ask the question then to the audience. So is it the output that matters and not the process? Because that's sort of what we heard. If I had to break it down, it makes me more efficient. All I care about is what I get for the output. The process of going through the steps to get there, if I can do that faster and cheat to get there through ChatGPT, or, sorry, maybe I shouldn't use the word cheat. Efficiently get there through ChatGPT, then that's what really matters.
So I'd like to say something on that. So in the context of education, our goal is also to learn. So the process also matters. So although I am arguing for boosting learning, in this particular case where you say like ChatGPT can do something in 10 seconds where I'll take 20 minutes to write a program, that's assuming you already know how to write a program, you already know how to work with it. For people who are learning to program, maybe that's not the right approach to take.
Anyone on this side?
Development matters, so process matters to a certain point.
Ryan?
I'll speak on this for a second. So I agree. Development matters in terms of being able to develop the skills. Once you've developed those skills, efficiency matters, right? So there used to be a saying back in industry where it said, always hire the lazy engineer. And they will eventually work themselves out of a job. And what they meant by that was lazy engineers figure out ways to automate systems. And they figure out ways to be able to be more quote unquote productive because they essentially shrink their jobs, right? So, hey, I automated all the data analysis for this thing. I just press a button and then I sit around at my desk for the rest of the week. Well, now it's a remote work, so maybe you're not sitting around at your desk for the rest of the week, right? But is that laziness or is that actually getting to the point at which...
Did the AI do that or did the student do that?
No. So I'm talking about prior to AI.
Oh, okay.
You always hire the lazy engineer because the lazy engineer would figure out how to essentially automate their job, right?
Okay.
AI is essentially just another tool for helping to automate some jobs, right? So if you look at AI that way, great. Let's be as lazy as possible because laziness on the things that we know how to do already and are just rote abilities to just create the thing, make the widget, right? Lets us actually use what our brains are developed for, creating new things, right? Coming up with new concepts, conceptualizing new things to teach to others, right? So when we can put away the mundane and make that more efficient so that we can concentrate on the complex and the things where we can't rely on LLMs. LLMs are just probability machines anyways. To create new knowledge, we should be concentrating on what we do best, creating new knowledge, and great. Let's let efficiency help itself in the mundane once you've learned how to do it. The danger is in letting something else do something for you that you don't understand, right? Hey, the answer is put this beam in of this size to keep the building up. Do I trust the AI that does do that, or do I trust that somebody else should have learned that ahead of time so that they can check it and go, yeah, that checks.
Yeah.
That beam looks like it's the right size, instead of like, oh yeah, we just did what the AI told us and we put in a straw that's steel and it should be fine, that one piece of rebar, right? And then the building collapses and hurts people. We need humans also checking these things, but checking work is a lot faster than doing the work from scratch. But you have to learn how to do that first to be able to check it.
So being on the Luddite side and just having that whole image, you remind me a nice moment of memory of my dad who worked at IBM. And they were encouraged to work themselves out of jobs. But the key was you didn't work yourself out the door, like you got another new job and so on. And that's not what the Luddites experienced. They just were out of jobs. You had mentioned, Ryan, something about that the lower workers would be let go and the higher workers. That's not the way it's going to be. The lower workers will be able to manage the new technology, and that's what happened to the Luddites, was basically the machines took over and the unskilled people were able to get paid less and carry on. And that's, the whole thing is just a worry about society, right? Like, how is society going to be managed and function? And how do we move to the next level because we have this technology that's going to make things efficient and so forth. So we do have to pay attention to that. I'll just finish by responding to the question. Teachers are paying attention to the process. They will ask students, what did you ask ChatGPT? Like, how did you query it? Give me a journal, a set of entries. Tell me what you were thinking as you were doing it. So it's not just the output, it's the process as well.
I think that's a fantastic point to end us on. I think we're kind of right at the end of time here. Please join me in just thanking our panelists. It is a big deal to get up here and do this. So.